Thank you for coming. Special thanks to Karen Berry and Patterson Belknap for hosting us again this year. And let me just say a word about Donor Direct Action. For those of you who don't know us, we were created to raise funds and visibility for frontline partners around the world. And we're just so lucky to have 3 of our partners with us. Right now, as you may know, is the UN Commission on the Status of Women. So it's been a really crazy week for all of us. But our goal, we started out trying to raise funds, and then we realized actually it's not just about funds, it's also about visibility. And you'll see outside on the table there are op-eds that are written by each of our partners that we've helped them place. All week we've been doing meetings. They've been meeting with the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the Secretary General, the Special Representative on Sexual Violence and Conflict, the Nobel Prize laureate Lema Bowie. So our goal is to get them out of the basement of the UN and up to the 38th floor, and we actually did that this time. I don't want to take a lot of time, and we seem to have a new tradition now, which I really love, of starting with music. So I want to thank and welcome the band Betty, Amy and Elizabeth Ziff, and Allison Palmer, who are going to sing us into this panel.
If one woman hurts, one woman, if one woman cries, one woman, if one man bleeds, rise, rise, up, get up, dance, up, get up, sing, up, get up, change everything, up, get up, dance, up, get up, sing, up, get up, change everything. What time is it? Time to rise up!
I think that's a great way to start the panel. And if you want to hear some of the other songs, on April 29th, Betty is performing at City Wineries. So if you're still in town, definitely join us there. And now it's really a great honor to introduce Lynn Nottage, who is an award-winning playwright. And her plays, her play Ruined, I have to say, is just my all-time ever favorite play. And she's written so many plays that just bring to people who I think otherwise wouldn't be able to connect to so many of the issues that we all care about and are working on. And she uses the magic of her art to really bring those issues to a much broader public than we could ever reach. So it's really great to have her here with us. She's super busy with a new play, and it's really an honor to have her on our steering committee. And she is going to introduce and moderate the panel.
Thank you, Jessica. Can you hear me? The Democratic Republic of Congo is one of the most dangerous countries in the world to be a female. But this brave woman who's sitting right next to me, who's Justine Masika Bihamba, did I say it correctly? Is trying to change things from the ground up. She has faced death threats and abuse. Her staff has been attacked, but she's still standing and in fact doing more than ever. And I remember when Donor Direct Action was literally just an idea and a dream. And I remember sitting with Jessica in her living room and thinking, is this possible and how do we make this happen? And today I'm really proud to say that since the inception of the organization, that $2 million has been raised for our partners around the world, which is incredible. And I'm really thrilled also to say that we have partners who are here today who are going to share a little bit about their organizations. But before I introduce Justine, I wanted to introduce a clip.
Did you know that the work of women's rights activists the world over is the single most important factor in making the world a better place for us all? Yet women's groups have always been underfunded, and now the situation is even worse. That's why Donor Direct Action supports these incredible frontline activists, and that's why I support Donor Direct Action.
Les femmes qui sont prises à charge par la synergie des femmes doivent avoir où faire leurs activités. Et leurs activités là, c'est dans le cadre de prise à charge et médicale et psychosociale pour préparer leur intégration dans la vie communautaire. Travailler avec les femmes autour d'une activité en commun parce que ça leur permet de parler, de se parler et de s'exprimer en rapport avec leur vie traumatique. Et c'est pour cette raison que vous avez vu des femmes en train de faire les chants. Et faire les chants, pourquoi? Parce qu'elles ont été prises en charge médicalement. Et du point de vue psychosocial, ils se sont dit non, nous étions des agricultrices avant notre vécu traumatique. Alors nous avons besoin de faire les chants.
Kwetu kulikuwa vita, wakawa wanangu, wakawa na watoto mbili na wanaume nne wakanibaka.
Il y a eu nos conseillères ici qui sont allées à sa recherche, mais elle est arrivée, elle saignait de partout. La dernière fois quand elle est partie à Goma, on a constaté que des MENA porteuses du VIH. Nous aimerions que la moitié puisse servir d'un hôpital, qu'il y ait des médecins qui seront affectés ici, parce que quand une femme a été violée un peu à l'écart de la ville, la récupérer avant 72 heures pour qu'elle ait des médicaments qui puissent l'aider à ne pas être contaminée, à ne pas concevoir, c'est un peu difficile. Il y a aussi des filles qui ont été victimes de violences sexuelles. Alors pour ces filles-là, nous leur aidons à leur octroyer un montant qui peut les servir à leur scolarisation.
Okay, so Justine was thanking everybody for being here tonight. She's very proud to introduce her work.
La Synergie des femmes pour les victimes de violences sexuelles, c'est une plateforme de 35 organisations, en majorité féminines, qui travaillent pour une prise en charge globale des victimes de violences sexuelles en province du Nord Kivu.
So her organization, Synergie des Femmes, is actually a platform of 35 different organizations, all Frontline, who are working and supporting victims of sexual violence and women across North Kivu. And they're bringing a holistic response to help these survivors.
Comme vous l'avez vu dans la vidéo, on s'occupe de l'accompagnement psychosocial, de la réinsertion socio-économique, de la prise en charge médicale et l'accompagnement juridique et judiciaire.
So they're providing survivors of sexual violence with medical support, psychosocial support, and also legal assistance.
En plus de la recherche des solutions aux conséquences des violences sexuelles, on essaie aussi de travailler sur les causes. Les causes sont nombreuses, mais on travaille seulement sur 4 causes.
And Synergie is not only working on the consequences of violence, they're also trying to tackle the causes.
Et la première cause, c'est les conflits à répétition qui sont alimentés par l'exploitation illégale des ressources naturelles.
The first cause is the armed conflict that is caused by the illegal exploitation of natural resources.
La deuxième cause, c'est l'impunité qui est généralisée.
The second cause is the general impunity in the country.
La troisième cause, c'est la non-réforme du système de sécurité.
The third cause is the absence of reform of the safety and security system.
Et la dernière cause, c'est les coutumes et traditions qui considèrent la femme comme étant inférieure.
And the final cause are the customs and traditions that actually consider and present women as inferior to men.
Je dois dire que la situation politique et le contexte actuel, la non-organisation des élections en 2016, comme stipule notre constitution, a fait qu'il y ait multiplicité de groupes armés et il y a eu augmentation des cas de viol.
So right now the country is facing a very deep political crisis. The elections that were supposed to take place a few months ago have not been organized. And the consequence of this political crisis is the increase of violence and the increase of the number of armed groups.
Comme pour notre organisation, l'année 2016, on a accompagné plus ou moins 750 cas de violences sexuelles, mais cette année, l'année 2017, les cas ont presque doublé. Nous sommes arrivés jusqu'à 1300.
In 2016, Synergie supported 760 survivors of sexual violence. And sadly, in 2017, this number virtually doubled. They are counting like over 1,300 victims who they welcomed in their shelters and their centers. So the situation is degrading.
Les femmes et les organisations de femmes dans mon pays, ils jouent un grand rôle dans la communauté. Mais malheureusement, lorsqu'il y a des négociations de paix, elles sont toujours oubliées.
Women are playing a huge role in their communities, villages, they're central. But sadly, when it comes to peace building and peace process, they're totally absent and they're nowhere to be seen at the table.
C'est ainsi qu'en septembre 2017, nous avions organisé un forum au niveau national pour l'implication des femmes dans les négociations de paix et surtout la participation des femmes dans les négociations de paix, la participation des femmes dans la prévention des conflits et la protection des femmes pendant les conflits.
Okay. So in this context, Synergie coordinating the Congolese Women's Forum last September, the forum brought together 65 women activists from all parts of Congo. And the goal was to coordinate their action and also to ensure that women have a plan of action to really participate in the peace building process and the political process as well as conflict prevention.
Et nous avons vu que les femmes qui sont dans les communautés doivent participer pour consolider la paix en assistant à les communautés, surtout dans l'élaboration des priorités, des problèmes prioritaires et voir comment les femmes peuvent contribuer pour l'élaboration des budgets qui tiennent compte des besoins spécifiques des femmes.
So the women during the forum came up with a national action plan, and the way the plan works is that each woman's going to train women at the local level, and they're going to advocate and lobby the local authorities for gender-sensitive budgets to be voted, and they also want to organize workshops and activities to really emphasize the importance of women's political participation.
Notre plan pour l'avenir est que nous puissions avoir une participation massive des femmes dans la gestion de la chose publique. Puisqu'on dit souvent qu'une seule femme en politique, la politique la change, mais plusieurs femmes en politique, elles changent la politique.
So Justine's goal and the Women's Congolese Forum's goal is really to obtain a massive participation of women in the political and peace-building process. And they always say, one woman in politics, the politics going to change her. But many women in politics, they're going to change the politics. So that's what they're going to do.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you, Justine. I have a mic. Thank you, Justine, for sharing a little bit about the incredible work that you're doing in the DRC. And I'm going to now turn to our second guest, who is Randa Siniora, who's from the Women's Center for Legal Aid and Counseling, or it's better known as WCLAC in Palestine. And we have another short clip that we want to share with you before we speak with her.
كل شيء ساعدوني. أنا كنت إنسانة محطمة صفر.
هسا أنا قبل ما أوصل لهاي المؤسسة هون كنت يعني تلخيصي أنا كإنسانة مكسورة، كإنسانة يأسانة من الحياة، ما فيش حدا يعني اللي يدعمني أو يدزني، لا عيشي، لا استمري، لا قاومي.
أبوي زلمة عصبي كثير، بس عنده ضرب، وعمامي هيك الكل بتدخل فينا. أمي فيش عندها شخصية طبعا، كنا معدومين الشخصية، لا بنطلع ولا بنيجي.
احنا كنا بحاجة للقاءات توعوية مع البنات نتيجة نقص عندنا في المدرسة انه ما عندي مرشدين.
بصراحة هي عن الميراث يعني الواحد كانت يعني تخجل أو ما تعرفش يعني شو تطالب في حقوقها عند أهلها وشو إلها وشو عليها، فهسه صار عندها يعني شوية جرأة يعني الواحد تحكي وتطالب في هذا الشيء.
كان من الضرورة أنه تفكر بطريقة إبداعية، إنك أنت بدل ما تتوقع إنك أنت تتوقع من النساء ضحايا العنف ونساء اللي عندهم مشاكل قانونية وبيعانوا من القوانين السارية اللي بتميز ضدهم، إنه أنت تتوجه لهم. فجاءت فكرة المؤسسات القاعدية، وهي المؤسسات القاعدية بنعمل معها بالشراكة الفعلية، لأن هاي مؤسسات إلها امتداد جماهيري على المستوى النساء والمجتمع اللي بيعملوا فيه، ولهم علاقات كثير قوية على هذا المستوى.
Randa, it's really great to meet you, and I know that you've been working on a very wide range of issues, in particular femicide. And there's one case in particular that you're working on, which is about Suha Aldik, who was a woman who was killed by her husband in a kitchen in 2004. And I'm wondering whether you might share some information about the work that WCLAC's doing and last year's judgment in particular, which caused ripples throughout the Palestinian society.
Thank you very much, and thank you for Donor Direct Action for inviting me. It's my honor to be with you today and share my experience on behalf of thousands of Palestinian women, victims of gender-based violence. Violence is still in our society, and women are the real victims of that. Femicide, it continues to exist. We don't say only honor killings, because under honor killings, this is a pretext for killings that are taking place for depriving women of their right to inheritance, to their right to enjoy any kind of their rights. Sometimes they are made to commit suicide and not really commit suicide out of their will, because of the cultural constraints under which they live and because of the patriarchal societies under which we live, which is also further complicated with the continued Israeli violations and occupation of the Palestinians, which makes violence in the whole society reflect itself on the lives of women in our own society. The story of Suhadik is one of the many cases of women who have been killed under the pretext of honor killing. And I think the strength of that case is that we consolidated our efforts as women's organizations under the Forum to Combat Gender-Based Violence. And we wanted to say no of killing women for any reason. The right to life is a very important right. So we wanted to make sure that we don't let this case be covered by legitimate, quote unquote, justifications of the society and the discriminatory legislation under which we're still living, because the laws that are in force are still the laws of the Jordanians or the Egyptians and under the previous rules, and therefore they have not been changed. And these are very discriminatory. They go back to Lebanese laws and back to Napoleon Bonaparte. The penal laws need to be changed. The laws to protect women from gender-based violence need to be changed. We had to fight. But the individual case of Suhadik is very important, because in that case, we wanted to observe all of the courts. We stood before the courts. We said that stop killing women, and we joined our efforts to end that. And while we are not happy with the final judgment, which was 7.5 years, we are happy because this is a precedent. Before that, it was, the cases were always being excused by being honor killings. In this case, because we observed the courts, we said no, we stood before the court, the appeal court, The first judgment was really disappointing. It was only 2 years. And the guy went out and he was saying he was imprisoned for 2 years and 4 months. He went out as a perpetrator to say, well, I owe the government 4 months. So we were really very frustrated about the case. So we went, when it was appealed by the public prosecution office, we were like calling for the public prosecution to take it as a public interest case. It was brought again before the court, and a judgment was made at the beginning that it's a case of murder, but then the final ruling was manslaughter. Having said all of that, just to make the long story short, I think if we didn't stand up together to say no for killing women and for honor killings, we would have, it would have ended with 2 years, and sometimes it ends with 1 year. So while we are working on this case, we want to bring justice to all Palestinian women, not only to Suhad Dik in this case, but we found in that case as a very good example to say no. Now, fortunately, in this month of March, our government, after all the advocacy work that we did with our counterparts from international organizations and national organizations working to combat violence, we have been able to achieve the abolition of one of the provisions that has been many times used in the killing of women under the pretext of honor killings. And that is the one that a person, a family member could waiver legal proceedings by giving up the personal right, and gives the discretion to judges to really lower the sentences, give very low sentences in cases of honor killings or femicides. Finally, the president and the cabinet, the Palestinian cabinet, decided to add a provision in the current law, that penal law, that says that nobody benefits from lowering judgments or discretion of the judges to lower the sentences in cases of honor killings of Palestinian women. In addition, we have been able to call for the abolition of 13 crimes. In one provision, there's 13 sexual crimes that would be immediately waived, and no legal proceedings or judicial proceedings taken if the perpetrator marries from his victim. So we keep women in the same vicious circle. So we were able finally to have a decision to abolish this provision until we reach a stage where we adopt our own penal law, not the Jordanian penal law that is still in force. Despite, the passage of years, it's the 1960 penal law that is in force. And we are really working towards the adoption of a family protection law to protect all victims of gender-based violence within the family. This is part of the work that we do. While we work with individual cases, we also look far ahead a little bit to how we can influence policies, influence legislation, and adopt more gender equality legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'm so pleased that you're able to slowly begin to chip away at these very archaic laws that are in existence. And so now for our final guest this evening, we have Mickey Meji, who works with a group that's called Embrace Dignity in South Africa. We also have a short clip that we want to share with you before we speak to Mickey.
In South Africa, presently, prostitution, both the sale and purchasing of sex, are criminalized. And the situation is that women who are marginalized by poverty, by inequality, by lack of opportunities in our economy, end up in prostitution. But over and above that, they get victimized by our law because they're the ones who end up being arrested and being fined.
From the stories that I've been hearing from people, both from working with women in prosecution and also working in prosecution. I've always known that people are not there because they want to be or because they chose, but people would like a way out.
Over here is Mandy's story. She chose this particular spot. As she says, she wanted this photo taken here because I wanted people to really feel my story. I've almost been stabbed to death in this spot. It is here that I can really think about and feel my reality.
I found it CESP. It's an idea that I've been toying around for the past 4 years. It's about empowering and supporting women who would like to exit prosecution. And also, whilst addressing that factor, it would also reduce the number of new recruits into prosecution, hopefully dealing with young girls, because in most instances when you speak to women in prosecution, most of them started off as a child.
Mickey, I'm really glad to have you here tonight, and I'm hoping that you can tell us a little bit about your experience of working in the sex trade and being a survivor, and also how your views have shifted over the course of time with regard to the policies on prostitution.
Oh, okay. Good evening.
Is your mic working? Can we pass the other? Yeah, there you go.
Good evening. I'm not very good with these. Okay, yeah. Good evening, and thank you to Donna Direct for having me here today. And okay, my experiences in the sex trade. I started off in the sex trade not at such a very young age, but on that, I'll call it that fateful day, I had gone out job hunting. I think I was about 19, and I already had a child at this time. So there was a man who stopped by me. This was in the afternoon. He had a registration from somewhere in George, which is about 4 hours drive from Cape Town. And he proposed. Okay. Oh, God. Sorry.
Is the other one?
Oh. Oh, okay. So he proposed, or he made an offer of business, which I did not understand at the time, but he later explained. I was hungry, I had no money, no hope of getting it anywhere, no job. I thought, who's going to find out in any case? And I came back and I was a couple of hundreds richer when I got back. And then, so it happened that a couple of months down the line, my mother was indebted because she was not working, and there was a humiliation according, with the community. And I remembered that a couple of months back, I had gotten an offer like this. So I went back to the same area with the hope of finding men who would be wanting the service, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted to save the day. And again, there was the threat of us losing our shack, which was our home, because the community threatened to sell it as well if my mother doesn't pay up. And I negotiated a time frame, and that was how I got into prostitution. And initially, my plan was to pay off the debt and get off it. But then I found that it was able to put food on the table. And it was just maybe a couple of months when it looked good, or it seemed good, because I was making some good money, things were bettering off. Until then, I started meeting sex buyers who were very violent, or when I was made to do things that I did not want to do. And because by now, men were starting to get used to my face, and I was no longer the new girl where a person would think, okay, because you are new, I'll let you go today. So that was it. But then I was found by, there was an organization in South Africa called the Sex Worker Education and Advocacy Task Force, who was already doing rights and advocacy for sex workers. And they approached me. It was 2 years before I went to them, because initially I felt that first and foremost, I didn't know that I was a sex worker, and I knew that what I was doing at that point, it was my moral conviction that it was wrong, and I was in no position to demand for rights. But then something happened, and I had to go to Sweat. There was a lady that we used to work with who was murdered, and Sweat had offered to transport us to the place to pay our last respects, as it is in culture. So when I went to the space, we started speaking. So it so appeared that I was then offered a job to, initially first it was a stipend to do voluntarily work, but then to advocate for the decriminalization of prostitution, to also go out in the streets and do outreach and mobilize other survivors that we used to work with. My shift came in 2012, and unlike many women, so most of the women in the context of South Africa is that most women in the system, exploited in the system of prostitution, have very limited levels of literacy, first and foremost. So it's not all people that likes to read. So in 2012, while in the middle of advocacy for law reform, for the decriminalization of prostitution and its recognition as work in South Africa, we were lobbying COSATU, which is the biggest confederation of the trade unions in the country. And when we came back, there was a commissioner, and this was after the Kylie case. I don't know if all of you know, but Kylie was a woman who worked at a brothel in Cape Town. She was dismissed because she refused to service a sex buyer without a condom. And she challenged this. She took it to the CCMA. The CCMA said they would not hear the case because prostitution is illegal. And with the assistance of SWET, she challenged it in the highest court, and there was the labor appeal courts ruled that the CCMA needed to hear the case, even though the CCMA could not suggest that she be reinstated, because that way they will be encouraging illegal, acts. So the CCMA, they did not want to be dealing with a lot of cases of this nature. So they wanted to reduce the number of cases and harm. So they made an approach to SWET to say, let us train the brothel owners and train the sex workers so that they are all able to understand their rights, the brothel owners that do not harm. And this commissioner that we spoke with, everybody at SWET agreed. But once the commissioner left, there was a special meeting that was called. And in this meeting, it was said, we cannot allow them to train the brothel owners or the pimps. Let us allow them to continue to exploit these women and abuse these women. But let us train the women so that these women may know when their rights are abused. And this was because we had money from the OSF to do a human rights defense program. And this defense program indicators were that the number or the amount of human violation cases that we documented. So this was about the numbers. And the moment I walked out of that room, I said to Collie, who is now the national coordinator of the sex worker movement in South Africa, I am not going to be here for long because this does not work for our people. For me, the idea seemed very attractive because I understood by then that the law would not change tomorrow, but we did not need to let women die. The law has not changed today in South Africa, but anything that is going to reduce the harm and save the lives of women should be welcome, if there is any intervention. So I decided right there, and this was March in 2012, and I was out of SWET by May. And then I pondered with the idea, like I mentioned in the video, I've been thinking about it for 4 good years. The other danger of the pro-prostitution lobby worldwide, and I know in South Africa, is that it does not introduce other forms, other legal frameworks. The only thing that is given to you is that decriminalization is good for you. And at that moment, when you are thinking that the only thing that is hindering me from making my money is the police, and I need to make money. If the police were not harassing me, I would be able to make my money because now we are worried about our kids. It looks attractive. I went back and I started reading up on all these legal options. And at that time, Embrace Dignity was even portrayed as judgmental, moral, people who did not understand our situation. And when I found that, so I started, my own exercise was that, what do I want in life? What did I grow up wanting to be? And what happened? And then I took the 4 legal options. I started ticking the boxes. Which one ticked the most boxes when I compared? Which law would initially offer me what I want? Because for me, at that point, for the woman, for the ordinary woman in the street, it's not a matter of what law is in place, but of what services are there to assist this woman. And for me, the equality model, sometimes known as the Nordic or Swedish law or the sex buyer law, is what ticked the most boxes. And so I approached Embrace Dignity and I said, this is what I wanted to do. And that was the formation of Kwanele, when I asked Embrace Dignity to give me support to consult with women. And they supported me to consult with 30 women initially in Cape Town. And again, we did this exercise together and we all agreed that the equality model is what we wanted. But then because of lack of capacity amongst ourselves, we also need the assistance of an organization, and Embrace Dignity has been doing that work very well. So that was my journey.
Well, thank you, Mickey. Thank you. And I want to thank all of our frontline partners, Randa, Justine, for being here this evening and sharing a little bit about your incredible organizations. And I just want to let everyone know here that they're going to be around. So I encourage you to ask them questions while you sip a glass of wine. And now I'd like to welcome Jessica back up to the podium.
Thanks, and thanks to all of you for sharing what work you're doing and your own experiences. It's really just wonderful to have you here. Donor direct action, the direct part is to try to link people together using technology and using all of these visits. You know, I think the goal is to really inspire donors to make sure that their funds go as far as possible, and we believe that they will have the greatest impact in these frontline countries where, you know, most of the groups that we're partnering with, all of the groups that we're partnering with, they just don't have access to the kind of individual donors, private foundations. So we're trying to really forge those links. Well, this seems like a perfect moment for me to tell you about our website, where you can find information about all these groups and other partners that are doing incredible work. And as Chandra said, you know, we take them where they are and try to help them in whatever way they feel like they need help. So it might look a little disjointed, one group's doing this, another group's doing that, but we really believe that giving that international layer of support is the best way to do this. And so our website is donordirectaction.org, and you can make contributions directly to any of the groups that you want. We re-grant at least 90% of your donations directly to those groups. And you know, you can see I'm not that high tech, so I think we feel we have a lot of unrealized potential. We're trying to reach out on social media. There's a lot we can do. So I would urge you to do that. And before we close, I wanted to just introduce, we have a minister from the Congo with us who would like to say a few words. So I wanted to just give her a chance to say that, maybe with, do you need translation?
Rater cette occasion pour remercier tous ceux-là qui nous accompagnent par les interventions que vous donnez à la Synergie des femmes du Nord Kivu.
I want to take this opportunity to thank you all, and especially all of you who support us by supporting Synergie and their work.
Je peux vous rassurer que quand Justine a commencé ce travail, elle était encore très jeune, mais on avait commencé ensemble. Mais à un certain moment, moi, j'ai basculé dans la politique parce que j'ai trouvé que je ne pouvais plus continuer dans la société civile.
So we actually started together with Justine when we were very young, but at some point I just ended up doing politics because I felt like I couldn't do civil society anymore, but Justine continued the work with civil society.
Et je peux vous rassurer que le travail qu'elle fait, c'est un grand travail. Je sais que quand vous l'appuyez, vous ne vous imaginez pas l'ampleur du travail que vous faites sur terrain à faveur des femmes congolaises.
I want to personally assure you that Justine's work is absolutely outstanding. And when you support Justine and her work, you have no idea what impact you have for the women frontline in the villages in the country.
Mais pour le moment, elle a commencé un grand travail, c'est celui de former les femmes à la base. Parce que nous, comme gouvernement, nous installons les comités locaux à la base. Mais elle s'occupe de la formation de ces femmes et je crois que cela va avoir un grand impact pour le pays.
And Justine is also now working with women to train them, because the government has created local committees to work with communities, and Justine is Frontline, training the women and helping them to be part of the political life in territories. So it's very important.
Et je vous remercie beaucoup. Comme elle a dit, il faudra qu'il y ait beaucoup de femmes qui sont dans la prise de décision, parce que nous collaborons avec elle, parce que moi je suis femme et je comprends le travail qu'elle fait.
Thank you so much for your support. It's so important that women are participating in the political process and the peace building process. And as a woman, I particularly understand the importance of it.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Minister. It's really an honor to have you here with us. And I should add, we had a donor who went to the Congo, met Justine in Goma. When I first met Justine, she told me that in the previous year she had to close half of her shelters in North Kivu. Sexual violence was on the rise, but there were shelters were closing. And I asked her, how much does it cost to have a shelter? And she calculated a shelter, like a place for women to go, with 2 full-time staff was $500 a month. And I just found it heartbreaking that half of the shelters had closed because she didn't have the resources to keep them open. And now I think some of those shelters have reopened, and we have a donor who has been to visit her in Goma several times and was so impressed with her work that he gave her the funds to build a whole new big shelter in Goma, which they desperately needed. So so there's just so much you can do, and I think for us, you know, to be able to get that close to the work is an incredible privilege, and to be able to be a part of something so much bigger than we are. So I want to encourage you to grab a glass of wine, get some food, and talk with these amazing activists, because we're just so lucky to have them here with us. And thanks to all of you for all of your work. And thanks to Lynn.